The shift is about understanding the brain and the nervous system that is underneath that behavior. It is about regulating your own nervous system. It is about responding in ways that reduces the escalation, not fuels the cycle. Hi there, and welcome to the Brain First Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Devine, and I am a therapist, parent coach, and educator who supports parents that are raising children, teens, and young adults with brain-based differences and challenging behavioral symptoms. If you are a parent or caregiver of a child who has intense, confusing, relentless, or sometimes even scary behaviors, you are in the right place, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Brain First Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Devine, and today I want to talk about something that I see in almost every family I work with. That is the theme of these podcast episodes. I notice the themes in the families I work with, and I think, man, I should probably talk about that on the podcast because it is probably relevant to most of your lives as well. All right, so this is something that I know can feel incredibly defeating as a parent, and it's reflected in these moments where you think, why does this keep happening? Why do we keep ending up in this exact same struggle day after day after day? You ask your child to do something, they push back, things escalate, and before you know it, you're both overwhelmed, you're both frustrated, and nothing actually gets better. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know this isn't just your family. This pattern has actually been studied for decades. A researcher named Gerald Patterson, along with his colleagues, spent years observing real interactions between parents and children. And what they found in their research was a very consistent pattern that showed up across families. And it goes like this. A parent makes a demand. The child resists. The parent escalates. The child escalates. And eventually, sometimes it takes a while, but eventually one person backs down. And in that moment, when that happens, there's relief. But that relief actually reinforces the behavior on both sides. So over time, what starts to happen is that parents and children unintentionally begin to train each other to escalate because in the short term, it seems to work, even though in the long term, it leads to more intense behavior, more disconnection, and more of that stuck feeling. That repeated loop is what's known as the coercive cycle. It's sometimes also called the coercive family process. And once you see it, you start to realize, oh, this isn't about a quote-unquote difficult child. This isn't about a quote-unquote, ineffective parent. This is a pattern that pulls both of you in. So today, I want to help you understand that pattern. And more importantly, I want to give you some ideas on how you can begin to step out of it. How can you start to interrupt it? So let's begin by considering what this coercive cycle means through a brain first lens. Because most of the time when parents are in this cycle, the whole interaction, the entire pattern, it's seen through a behavioral lens. That's part of why things get stuck and why things become more entrenched over time. To the parent, it looks like defiance. It looks like, they refuse to listen. It looks like they're being so disrespectful. It looks like they are intentionally pushing my buttons or pushing limits. But through a brain first lens, we take a moment to get a little bit of space between their challenging behavior and our knee-jerk, sometimes visceral reaction to it, so that we have some space to look at what's actually driving that behavior and what's reinforcing this coercive cycle. What's driving the cycle is lagging cognitive skills and a dysregulated nervous system. So instead of asking, why won't my child do this? We start asking what might be getting in the way of them being able to do this. And there are a lot of possibilities in terms of answering that question. Your child might be dealing with inflexible thinking. That's a cognitive skill. They might have difficulty seeing another's perspective. They may have a lot of struggles with emotional regulation skills. Maybe they have a very small window of tolerance for stress. Maybe they are tired, meaning their brain is tired. They have that cognitive fatigue that has set in. Maybe their system is overwhelmed. They have sensory integration challenges. Maybe they have executive functioning challenges. Maybe they struggle with impulsivity. Maybe they process at a much, much slower pace than anyone around them ever imagined. Maybe they can't connect the dots. They can't see what leads to what. So no wonder they found themselves in this situation yet again. So what looks like intentional, it looks like they just won't do it. It is often actually, they don't have the skills. They can't do this. And when we misread that, we respond in a way that actually fuels this cycle that we're talking about. Now, there's another layer here too, which we always talk about in these episodes as well, which is your experience as the parent of a complex child in these moments, a child that I know requires so much of you, so much of your internal and your external resources. It's never just about our kids, right? It's also about what gets us activated, what triggers us. This is going to happen. And I say that with a lot of confidence because it is part of being human. None of us are immune to it. We will become activated. We will be triggered by our child's behaviors from time to time. And so I just want to level set with you so you don't feel like you're the only one, quote unquote, messing up in this way. And I say this drawing on my personal experience as a parent, but also my professional experience. It is a daily conversation that I'm having with the parents that I support. So instead of beating yourself up when you recognize that you were activated or triggered yet again, I'd like to encourage you to see it as information. This is about raising awareness. Now I have this information. I'm going to take it into consideration. What am I going to do differently next time this behavior comes up so that I can interrupt this pattern that we are stuck in? I can disrupt this coercive cycle. So when can this really trip us up? The time that I see it come up most often with the parents that I'm working with is when there is a behavior that clashes with one of their deeply held beliefs. Beliefs like, I'm the parent, so what I say goes. Don't ask questions, just do. My child needs to learn how the real world works. It doesn't work this way in the real world. They better shape up and behave. If I don't hold the line, if I don't get more rigid in my boundaries, if I don't have some show of force, either through my voice getting louder or the way I'm posturing my body, then they will walk all over me. I have to do this as a parent. And when those beliefs get activated, when our kids push up against them with their behaviors, especially when you're already tired, you're overwhelmed, you're on this path to burnout, your own nervous system becomes less flexible. Your window of tolerance shrinks. And so now you have two dysregulated nervous systems setting each other off, interacting with each other and activating each other. It's the perfect setup for this cycle to keep repeating itself. It's no wonder, right? It keeps happening. So then the question becomes, how do we interrupt this pattern? And the answer is not to just be stricter or I need to deploy harsher consequences. The interruption happens I want to categorize them generally as 3 steps, and it's before and during the interaction. Okay, so the first step is to pause and get curious. If you're able to get some space between their behavior and how you react in the moment, then great. That is a work in progress for many of the parents that I work with. If you know that's a struggle for you, I want to encourage you to keep going and working on it. because it is so, so valuable, but it is hard work. Okay. So if you're able to do that in the moment, awesome. And I'd encourage you to ask yourself before engaging in that moment when your child is getting more and more activated, are there lagging skills here that might be making this hard for them right now? Could that be a possibility? What actually matters in this moment? Really focusing in on what actually matters in this moment so you can direct your energy. And what do I want to communicate? What is it that I truly want to communicate to my child in this moment? And most importantly, am I regulated enough to engage? Because if you're not regulated, nothing you say is going to land the way you want it to. And if your child's not able to receive it because they are dysregulated, it becomes a very, very frustrating process for you, and you are wasting precious energy in that moment. Now, I know that sometimes you can't get space in the moment, okay? So again, no shame and blame. That is the goal, but we all have to work to get there. So this step of pausing and getting curious, it is something you can also do after the fact. When you are able to think more clearly, your thinking brain is back online to reflect on what happened, what went well, what do you wish you would have done differently, so that you can proactively plan for when this cycle begins in the future, so that you can step in a way that interrupts it. The second overarching step I want you to consider is to use fewer words. This is one I am always reminding myself of. When things start to escalate, our instinct for most of us is to explain more, to talk more, to lecture. But that increases our child's cognitive load and it increases their dysregulation. So I really want to encourage you to practice using fewer words, or maybe not talking at all in that moment. And if you do talk, keep it simple, right? And again, focus on your own regulation. How is that going? Do you need to do something to soothe your own nervous system as you take this step? The third step is to lead with regulation, not control. This coercive cycle that we're looking to interrupt, it definitely leads with control. And it makes all the sense in the world how we get there. Our child is behaving in a way that we do not think is good or right or appropriate. And our default is to see it through a behavioral lens, which tells us you need to control your child, right? And so we take all of our energy and we reach for our control and we use that in all these different ways to try to get control. It's a losing battle. Again, in the moment, it might tell you, I won. In the moment, it might say, this worked, right? But I think that over time, there is no winning, right? So leading with regulation, not control. If you are noticing that agitation building in your child, that's your cue. Not to push harder, again, that's leading with control, not to push harder, but to stop. You can pause the conversation, you can disengage, you can physically step away if you need to, not to abandon your child, not as avoidance, but as a momentary break for your nervous system and maybe for theirs too. It's a regulation strategy. Okay? And then you can always circle back later when both nervous systems are in a better place to handle it. If you take one thing from this episode, I hope it's this, that you're not stuck in this cycle because you're a bad parent or you're doing something wrong. You're stuck because you're in a pattern that is designed to keep going unless something changes. And it'd be great if that something was our child, if they were able to take the first step to interrupt this pattern. They don't have the skills to do that. They don't have the maturity to do that. So then it's up to us, right? And that shift is not about finding the best way to control your child. As I said, that is a losing battle. It's a path to burnout and will definitely keep this cycle more entrenched as time goes on. The shift is about understanding the brain and the nervous system that is underneath that behavior. It is about regulating your own nervous system. It is about responding in ways that reduces the escalation, not fuels the cycle. That is all really, really hard work. Again, especially when you're exhausted, especially when this pattern has been happening for a long time. The pattern is not disrupted overnight. I just want to set expectations, right? I don't want you to go and try this once and say, well, it didn't work. It takes time to unravel the pattern that for some of you, I know has become deeply entrenched. But even small shifts, especially around awareness, your own triggers, your own activation, their triggers, regulation, your regulation, and how are they doing with their regulation, those small shifts focused on those things can really start to change everything. It can truly start to change that dynamic in really powerful ways. All right. Thanks as always for being here. I appreciate you listening in. It's such an honor to be in your ears every other week with these episodes. And until next time, take great care. Hey, if you found today's episode helpful in any way, I'd like to ask a quick favor of you. And that is that you take just a moment to share this episode on Instagram or Facebook, the two places where I hang out most. By doing this, you will help me reach more parents who are really needing reassurance that they are not alone and that there is information out there that can help their family heal. Thanks so much in joining me in my efforts to reach them and support them. It is so appreciated.